All right, so this is the topic 2324 study guide. All right, so our quadratics, we're going to solve quadratics here. So our standard form quadratics are ax squared plus bx plus c. All right, so if a is equal to 1, we can use the standard x method. If a is something other than 1, we're not going to be able to use the standard x method. We have to either use factoring by grouping, or you have to use the box method. So on this one, a is equal to 1, so we're going to use your standard x method to solve this. So we need two numbers that multiply to negative 24 and add to 2. Okay, for negative 24, your factors are 1 times negative 24, 2 times negative 12, 3 times 8, negative 8, and 4 times negative 6. Or we could switch the negatives to the other side. Negative 1 times 24, negative 2 times 12, negative 3 times 8, and then negative 4 times 6. So we need to add the positive 2. So we're going to do this one. Negative 4 and 6 multiplies to negative 24, adds to 2. So when we factor, we're going to get x minus 4, and then x plus 6, which equals 0. Okay, then to solve, we need to figure out what values of x here are going to give us 0 for the first term and 0 for the second term. Because if the whole thing is going to be equal to 0, one of these two factors has to equal 0. So we're going to do x minus 4 equals 0. Right, this was that 0 product rule. Okay, we're going to add 4 to both sides. We get x equals 4. We subtract 6 from both sides. We get x equals negative 6. Okay, number 3, a is 1 as well, so we need to use that x method again. So we need two numbers that multiply to negative 16 and add to negative 6. Okay, for negative 16, right, we have negative 1 times 16. We have negative 2 times 8. And we have negative 4 times 4. We can also switch the negative, so we have 1 times negative 16, and we have 2 times negative 8. Those are our factors. We need them to add up to negative 6. All right, so that's going to be 2 and negative 8. 2 times negative 8 is negative 16. 2 plus negative 8 is negative 6. So our factors are going to be x plus 2 and x minus 8. Equals 0. Then we have to use that 0 product rule and set them both equal to 0. Each of the factors equal to 0. So x plus 2 is 0. X minus 8 is 0. We subtract 2 from both sides. We get x equals minus 2. We add 8 to both sides. We get x equals 8. So if we plugged in negative 2 or 8, we should get 0. Okay. All right, for 2 and 4, we notice that the a value is not 1, so we can't use the standard x method, but we do notice we could divide by 3 and by 3. Right, we have a common factor here. Okay, so this is going to give us 3x squared minus 10x minus 8. Okay, dividing all of these by 3 and then equals 0. So a still does not equal 1, so we're going to have to use factoring by grouping, or if you want, you could use the box method. So I'm going to use factor by grouping. So I'm going to do a times c, which is negative 24. All right, we got to do a times c, so 3 times negative 8, negative 24. And we need to add up to negative 10. So we need two numbers that multiply to 24. Negative 24 and add to negative 10, that's going to be negative 12 and 2. So I'm going to split this up into negative 12x plus 2x. So I'm going to have 3x squared minus 12x plus 2x minus 8 equals 0. Okay, and then I'm going to factor the first two terms and the second two terms. So we're going to factor the first two terms and then the second two terms. So those first two terms, 3x squared minus 12x, right? I can split this into 3 times x minus 3 times 4 times x. And then what do we have in common? We have a 3 and an x in common. So there's the 3 in common and an x in common. So when we factor this, we're going to factor out 3x. And then what we have left inside is x minus 4. Okay. For the other one, 2 times x could be 2 times x minus 2 times 4. So again, what do we have in common? We have a 2 and a 2. So we're going to factor out a 2. And then what's left inside is x minus 4. Right? And if you get something other than x minus 4, right, we know we've done something wrong. Okay, because both of these should be the same factors. So now we can factor out that x minus 4. And then what we have left is going to be 3x plus 2 equals 0. So now we can solve. We have x minus 4 equals 0. And we have 3x plus 2 equals 0. So we can add 4 to both sides. Get x equals 4. Subtract 2 from both sides. We get 3x equals negative 2. And then we can divide both sides by 3. We get negative 2 over 3. So our two solutions are x equals 4 and x equals negative 2 over 3. Okay, in the next one, I noticed they're all even, so I can divide everything by at least 2. But I can also divide everything by 4, right? So that's going to be 3x squared plus 8x minus 3 equals 0. Right, this way it just gives me some easier numbers to work with. Rather than working with double-digit numbers like 12, 32, and 12, I can now work with 3, 8, and negative 3. A is still not equal to 1, so we need to do a factor by grouping. So A times C is negative 9, and then B is 8. So I need two numbers that multiply to negative 9, but add to 8. So how about, multiply to negative 9 and add to 8. So how about 9 and negative 1? 9 times negative 1 is negative 9. 9 plus negative 1 is negative 8. So I'm going to split the bx up into 9x minus x. So it's going to be 3x squared plus 9x minus x minus 3 equals 0. I'm going to factor the first two. So what I have in common is a 3x, which leaves an x plus 3. I'm going to factor out a minus 1, which is going to leave x plus 3 equals 0. Right, we're factoring out of the first two. Greatest common factor is 3x. And over here, greatest common factor is negative 1. So I'm going to pull out 3x. I'm going to pull out negative 1. We should have x plus 3 and x plus 3. So then I factor my x plus 3, and I have left is going to be 3x minus 1. I set them both equal to 0, and I solve for x. X plus 3 equals 0. 3x minus 1 equals 0. We get x equals negative 3. We add 1 to the other side, and then divide by 3. We get x equals 1/3. Right, the next two are just the same thing with story problems, essentially. So let's look at them. Sarah throws a ball off a balcony 21 feet above the ground. The function h of x equals negative x squared plus 4x plus 21. Gives the height of the ball, so this is the height, and x is going to be seconds. So this is h of t. All right, and this is t. This is in seconds, this is in feet. Okay, so it starts at 21 feet. She's going to throw the ball up, and then it's going to come down. Okay, so we're going to end up with two answers. We're going to end up with a negative x-intercept. That's not going to be our answer. And then we're going to take the positive one. Okay, because when will the ball hit the ground? It's going to hit the ground when the height is 0. So we want to plug in 0. negative x squared plus 4x plus 21. Okay. A is not positive 1, it's negative 1. So we can use our factor by grouping or box method, but I think the easier way to do this is just divide everything by negative 1. So we get 0 equals x squared minus 4x minus 21. Okay, now we can just factor and find our x-intercepts. So we're going to use the x method because a is 1. So we need two numbers that multiply to negative 21, add to negative 4. Okay, so how about negative 7 and 3? Right, negative 7 times 3 is negative 21. Negative 7 plus 3 is negative 4. So we're going to have x minus 7 and x plus 3. So then we have to do x minus 7 equals 0 and x plus 3 equals 0. You add 7 to both sides, we get x equals 7. You subtract 3 from both sides, we get x equals negative 3. So negative 3 is not going to be our answer. It didn't take negative 3 seconds to hit the ground. It took 7 seconds to hit the ground, right? Negative 3 isn't going to work. Okay. So 7 seconds. All right, next one is essentially the same question, except that, she's throwing it from 12 feet off the ground, right? So if we draw our graph, right, she's starting at 12 feet. She's going to throw it up and it's going to come down. So we're going to have two x-intercepts, right? One's going to not work, one's going to work. Right, so we want to know when h is 0, the height is 0. So it's going to be 0 equals negative x squared plus x plus 12. Okay, we can just divide by negative 1 here so that our a value is 0 is 1. So we can use our traditional x method. So divide by negative 1, we get x squared minus x minus 12. So now when we factor, we can just use our standard x method. Two numbers multiplied to negative 12, add to negative 1. That's going to be negative 4 and positive 3. So when we factor this, we get x minus 4 and x plus 3. Right, so then x minus 4 equals 0. X plus 3 equals 0. We add 4 to both sides, we get x equals 4. Subtract 3 to both sides, we get x equals negative 3. Okay, so our answer here is going to be 4 seconds. All right, 7 through 12 here, we're just adding, subtracting, or multiplying complex or imaginary numbers. So in the first one, we're just adding. So again, you can imagine there's a 1 in front of here. This is just going to be 2 plus 8i plus 4i plus 2i. Okay, that's going to give us 2 plus 12 plus 14i. Okay. Next one, we're multiplying. So negative 13 times 9, that is 117, negative 117i, plus 13 times 5, that's going to be 5265i squared. Okay, for I squared, we can plug in a negative 1, so it's going to be negative 117i plus 65 times negative 1, which gives us minus 65. So if we write this in the form of a plus bi, we're going to have negative 65 minus 117i. Okay, the next one we're subtracting, so we need to distribute that negative. So 6 minus 5i plus 6 minus 8i. So that's going to give us, let's see, 12 minus 13i. Okay, the next one, we're adding. So 9 plus 4i plus 2 plus 3i. So if we add those together, that's going to give us 11 plus 7i. Okay, that should be an I at the end there. Okay, the next one here, we're multiplying, so we need to distribute. So negative 6i times 1 is negative 6i. Negative 6i times negative 7i is going to be positive 42i squared. For I squared, that's going to be negative 1. So this is plus 42 times negative 1. So 42 times negative 1 is going to give us negative 42 minus 6i. Okay, and then the last one we're subtracting, so we just need to make sure we distribute that negative. 4 minus 4i plus 3 minus 5i. Okay, 4 plus 3 is 7. Negative 4i minus 5i is going to be minus 9i. Okay, and that's it for the review or the study guide.